My name is Claire Bennett, and I became a wife and almost divorced in less than a day. It sounds like a bad joke, but it is my life. I married Adam Miller on a Friday in June in a small church on the edge of Brighton, in England. My dress was simple, bought on sale for £600. Adam's suit was rented. Between us, we had about £3,000 in savings and a great deal of hope. After the reception, we took a cab to our new house. The driver dropped us in front of a narrow brick place with peeling white paint and a tiny square of grass. It was nothing like the large house my sister owned in Surrey, but it had a bright blue door. I had chosen myself, and our names were on the lease. For me, that was enough. Inside, boxes were piled in the small living room. The kitchen was old, and the radiator rattled, but I loved it. This was the first house that felt like ours. Not my parents', not my sister's. We sat on the floor with a supermarket pizza and 2 cans of cheap beer. We talked about where to put the worn sofa his friend had given us, and how long it would take to save for a proper bed. Adam said that if he got his promotion, he would take me to New York and book one night in a hotel that cost $400, just so we could order room service without checking the prices. "It's you and me now," he said, touching his can to mine. "No more depending on anyone else's money." By anyone else, he meant my older sister, Olivia. Olivia lived in London, in a Chelsea flat with her rich husband, Patrick Hayes. She wore expensive clothes, spoke easily about pounds and profits, and liked to remind me that Dad had left most of his money tied up with her and that the house in Surrey was in her name. At the church, she had kissed my cheeks, studied my dress, and smiled. "So this is your big day," she said. "Very sweet, Claire. Very brave, choosing love over money." "I have enough," I told her. "Adam and I will be fine." She shrugged. "Just remember, if things go wrong, you don't have much to fall back on." Her words stung, but I pushed them away. That night, in our new house with the blue door and the rattling pipes, I chose to believe in my own story instead of hers. The next morning I woke in our narrow bedroom with my head on Adam's shoulder. For a few minutes I lay still, listening to his breathing and to the faint sounds from the street outside. My hand rested on my stomach, and I felt the thin gold ring on my finger. For the first time in years, I felt steady. Then someone knocked at the front door. 3 firm, even knocks. I slid out of bed, pulled on Adam's t-shirt, and went downstairs. The hallway felt longer in the cold morning light. The bright blue door that had looked so cheerful last night now seemed too loud. When I opened it, the woman waiting on the step was not holding flowers or a late wedding gift. She wore a dark suit. In one hand, she held a leather briefcase. In the other, a thick white envelope. "Mrs. Claire Miller?" she asked. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. She gave a small, professional smile. "Good morning. My name is Sarah Clark. I'm an attorney. I represent your sister, Mrs. Olivia Hayes." That was the moment my new life cracked, less than 24 hours after it had begun. For a second, I just stood there, holding the door, staring at the woman on my step. The word attorney echoed in my head like it belonged to some other life, some richer person's world. Not mine. Not my small house with the peeling paint and the second-hand sofa still wrapped in plastic. "I represent your sister, Mrs. Olivia Hayes," she repeated. "May I come in for a moment?" My first instinct was to say no, to close the door and run back upstairs, crawl into bed next to Adam, and pretend this morning had not started. But my name was on the door now. I was a wife. I was supposed to face things. "Yes," I said, stepping back. "Come in." She walked into the narrow hallway, her black heels clicking on the old wooden floor. Up close, she smelled like strong perfume and paperwork. Her hair was tied back, her face calm and unreadable. She looked around, taking in the half-unpacked boxes and the faint smell of yesterday's pizza. "This is very new," she said, not unkindly. "Yesterday was the wedding," I replied. "You missed it." "I was busy," she said. "Shall we sit?" I led her into the living room. The sofa was against one wall, a crate served as our coffee table, and the TV sat on the floor, not yet mounted anywhere. I brushed crumbs from the crate and sat opposite her on a folding chair. She set the envelope down between us like it was something fragile. "I'm afraid I have difficult news," she said. "Your sister has instructed me to deliver these documents to you. They are for your husband, Mr. Adam Miller, to sign." I looked at the envelope. The room felt smaller. "What kind of documents?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Some part of me had known from the moment she said Olivia's name. "Divorce papers," she said. The words should have exploded in my chest. Instead, they landed with a dull, heavy thud, like something I had already been carrying without knowing. "Divorce," I repeated. "We've been married one day." "I understand," she said softly. "There is also a personal note inside. From your sister to you." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside, there were many pages with neat black print and long lines for signatures. On top of them lay a smaller cream card, thick and expensive, with gold edges. A wedding quote was printed at the top in looping letters. "Love is trust, and trust is forever." Olivia's handwriting covered the rest of it, smooth and round, like always. "Dear sister, I don't need you anymore. I'm rich now. Now you have nothing, neither inheritance nor husband. Olivia." I read it twice. The first time, my brain did not believe the words. The second time, something inside me went very still. "Is this some kind of joke?" I asked. "I'm afraid not," the lawyer said. "Mrs. Hayes has made arrangements with Mr. Miller. If he signs today, she will transfer a very generous sum to him." She mentioned figures around £150,000, possibly more, as an incentive for him to end the marriage quickly and quietly. £150,000. More than I would see in 10 years at my admin job in Brighton. Enough to buy a house without peeling paint. Enough to make a man forget the vows he spoke yesterday in a small church at the edge of town. I thought of Adam's dream about the $400 hotel room in New York and how he had laughed like it was all just a game. I thought of the way he avoided talking about money when I mentioned my father's will and how most of it had ended up locked in companies under Olivia and Patrick's control. "So that's it," I said. "She is buying my husband the way she buys handbags." The lawyer did not answer. She did not have to. I placed the note back on the papers, very neatly, like closing a door. "You should know," I said quietly, "that my sister likes to believe I have nothing in my hands. No money, no power, no options. She has believed that for years." Her exact words were similar, the lawyer admitted. I nodded. That sounded like Olivia. Mrs. Miller," she said, correcting herself. "I am just here to deliver these. My client expects a quick response. She said you would understand you cannot fight this." At that, I felt something strange rise in me. It wasn't rage, not even heartbreak. It was a kind of dry, sharp amusement. "Oh," I said, and I could feel a small, steady smile tug at my lips. "She thinks I can't fight her." The lawyer watched me carefully now. "Can you?" I didn't answer her question. Instead, I stood and walked to the tiny hallway cupboard where my handbag hung on a hook. Inside it, under my wallet and keys, lay a brown envelope I had sealed 3 days before the wedding. On the front, in my neat handwriting, were the words, "For Mrs. Olivia Hayes. To be delivered by hand." I had not been sure when I would use it. I only knew that a day would come. I walked back into the living room, set the brown envelope beside the divorce papers, and looked straight at the lawyer. "Please," I said, "deliver this to your client. Today. Tell her it is my reply." Sarah Clark hesitated. "May I ask what is inside?" "You may ask," I said, "but I won't tell you. Not before she reads it." Her eyes met mine, searching, measuring. Maybe she expected tears, begging, an argument. Instead, she saw a woman in an old t-shirt in a small house, holding onto something invisible but very real. "I'll make sure she gets it," she said at last. "Good," I replied. "Then you can also tell her one more thing for me." "And what is that?" she asked. I let my smile grow just a little, not wide, but sure. "Tell her," I said, "that I always read the fine print." After the lawyer left, the house felt even smaller. I stood in the living room with her footsteps still echoing in my ears, the divorce papers on the crate between the sofa and my chair, and Olivia's note sitting on top, like a little flag of victory. Upstairs, Adam was still asleep, or pretending to be. I didn't go to wake him. Instead, I picked up the brown envelope I had given to Sarah Clark, the twin of it still tucked away in my thoughts, and I let my mind slide back 7 years, to the first time I understood what my sister was really capable of. 7 years earlier, I still lived in the big house in Surrey with my parents. The garden there was wide and full of old trees, the kind that made the house feel grounded and strong. My father, Richard Bennett, owned a small but valuable property company. Nothing huge, but he had worked for 30 years buying and renting buildings across the south of England, a row of shops in Reading, a block of flats in Bristol, a tiny office building in Birmingham. He used to say, "Bricks and mortar, Claire, they don't disappear overnight." I believed him. I also believed him when he said that one day everything would be split fairly between Olivia and me. He always repeated those words, split fairly. Then he got sick. A stroke, then another. He stopped going into the office every day and started spending more time in his study, wrapped in a blanket, papers spread out in front of him. Olivia suddenly became very helpful. She sat in on his meetings, brought him tea, smiled at his lawyer, a neat man called Mr. Graham who always smelled of starch and ink. I was in my early 20s, working as a receptionist in a small accountancy firm in Guildford. I thought my job was boring, but it taught me one useful thing, how to look at numbers and see when they didn't add up. One evening, I came home early and heard voices from the study. The door was not fully closed. Olivia's tone was low and smooth as she spoke to Mr. Graham. She was saying that it would be simpler and more tax efficient if the company's shares were transferred into her name only, at least for a while. She said I didn't care about business, that I had told her so myself. Mr. Graham hesitated, but she pressed him, talking about speed and father's wishes and future control. I stood in the hallway, listening, holding my breath. When they mentioned my name again, my stomach turned cold. Later that night, when my father was asleep and my mother was upstairs, I slipped into the study. The desk lamp was still on. A folder lay open with the title, Restructuring. There, in black and white, I found documents that moved the company's shares into a holding company. On paper, it looked like a temporary step. In truth, all the directors were Olivia and a quiet man in London I had never heard of. My own name appeared on a separate page, a consent form stating that I agreed to let Olivia manage my part for my benefit. At the bottom was a shaky copy of my signature. The only problem was I had never signed it. I felt sick. My first thought was to march upstairs, wake my father, and shout the truth. But he was weak, and his speech was slow, and I could almost hear Olivia's voice in my head. "You're upsetting him for no reason, Claire. You always overreact." So I did something else. At work the next day, I used the office copier when everyone was out at lunch. I copied the consent form, the share transfer documents, and the notes between Mr. Graham and Olivia about limiting Claire's involvement for the sake of efficiency. I slipped everything into a plain brown envelope and wrote the date on the corner. That was the first time I wrote the words for Olivia on an envelope. Over the next months, more things changed. The company was sold to another firm for a lot of money. The official number I heard mentioned at home was just under £800,000, but in emails I managed to see on my father's old computer, there was talk of £2 million, even more in future payments. Some of the amounts were in dollars, wired to an account in Patrick Hayes' name, long before he officially appeared in our lives. I printed those emails too. I kept them with the first documents, adding my own notes in careful handwriting. It became a quiet habit. When I saw a lie in writing, I made sure it had a twin copy in my envelope. I confronted Olivia once, in the kitchen, when the house was empty. I told her I knew she had used my fake signature, that she had moved the company behind our father's back, that she was hiding money. For a moment, something ugly flashed across her face, but it was gone in a second, replaced by that soft, slightly tired smile she wore in public. She told me I was being dramatic. She reminded me that she paid more of the bills now. She even said that if I kept quiet, she would look after me later. "You're not good with money, Claire," she said kindly, as if she were doing me a favor. "Leave all this to me." I didn't argue. I just looked at her and thought, you don't know me at all. You don't know what I have already put away where you can't touch it. When our father died, the will looked fair on the surface. I got the house in Surrey. Olivia got control of the investment structures, as they were called. My mother, beaten down by grief, signed wherever she was told. Everyone said I was lucky to have a house. They did not know that the real wealth had already moved through invisible wires into accounts in London and New York with Olivia and Patrick's names on them. Everyone believed Olivia's story of family money. Everyone except me. So when I sat in my small Brighton living room, almost 7 years later, with my cheap sofa and my rattling radiator, I knew exactly what I was holding in that brown envelope. It contained copies of every fake signature and false number. It held the emails where Olivia joked about bleeding the old company dry before Claire wakes up. It held a short letter from me, telling her that I knew, that I had known all along, and that copies of everything were already in safe hands. I had even written one clear line. If she ever used money to hurt me again, those copies would go straight to Patrick, to the tax office, and to the police. That was our 7-year secret. She thought it was buried. I knew it was only waiting. By late afternoon, the house had gone quiet again. Adam had finally come downstairs, pale and jumpy, and I had shown him the papers without a word. His eyes had moved quickly over the pages, then to Olivia's note, then to my face. He hadn't asked how I knew what was going on. He only asked one thing, in a low, guilty voice. How much did she offer? When I told him, he sank down on the sofa and covered his face with his hands. I left him there. There are some answers you need to find alone. By evening, he had packed a small bag. He said he needed space to think. I didn't stop him. When the door closed behind him, the house felt strangely lighter, even with my heart aching in my chest. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the small crate we used as a table, the divorce papers in front of me. I didn't sign anything. I simply waited. Not for Adam. For the other call I knew would come. It arrived just after 7. My phone lit up with her name, Olivia. For a moment, I watched it flash and buzz on the table. I could almost see her on the other side of the city, in her perfect London kitchen, standing by a marble counter bought with family money. On the 4th ring, I picked up. "Claire," she burst out, not even waiting for me to speak. Her voice was nothing like it had been at the wedding. There was no smooth control, no lazy amusement. It was high and cracked, threaded with panic. "How could you do this to me?" I stayed silent. Let her talk. "How could you know?" she cried. "Those documents, those emails, Patrick has seen everything. His lawyer has seen everything. They're asking questions about the sale, about the company, about the accounts in New York. Claire, how could you know our 7-year-old secret?" There it was. Our secret, as if I had helped plan it, as if we were partners in what she and Mr. Graham and Patrick had done. I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath. "It was never our secret," I said quietly. "It was yours. I just refused to forget it." "You copied everything," she went on, almost choking. "The transfers, the fake consent form, the emails where I joked about bleeding the company dry. Patrick is furious. He says I lied to him when I called it family money. He's talking about fraud. Do you know what that means for me? For us?" "You're the one who married a man who lives and breathes money," I replied. "You thought he'd never check the numbers?" "He trusted me," she said, almost whispering now. "And you've destroyed that." "No," I said. "You destroyed it when you built your life on stolen bricks." I just showed him the plans. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, quick and uneven. When she spoke again, the sharpness was gone, replaced by something that sounded frighteningly like fear. "What do you want, Claire?" she asked. "You must want something. Money? I can fix this. I'll transfer you £200,000. Or more. Just tell Patrick there's been a misunderstanding, that you're making it up, that you're confused. Please." It struck me, not for the first time, how easily she thought problems could be solved with numbers on a screen. Pounds and dollars shifted from one account to another, like moving furniture around to hide a stain. "I don't want your money," I said. "Not like that. Not from there." "Then what?" she cried. "Do you want the house in Surrey back? Do you want a flat in London? I'll sign them over. I'll do anything. Just stop this before it goes further." I stared at the chipped mug in front of me, at the tea going cold. I thought of our father in his study, telling me that fairness matters more than winning. I thought of the builders and young families who now paid too much rent because people like Patrick and Olivia treated homes as chips in a game. "I want you to put something right," I said at last. "Not for me. For him. For Dad." She went quiet again. "What does that mean?" she asked slowly. "You will take a large part of what you took from the sale of the company," I said. "Real numbers, Olivia, not the fake ones you showed Mum. At least half. You will put it into a trust in our parents' names. That trust will help young people who want to build or buy honest homes, small business owners who want to buy their first property. Not luxury flats, not shiny offices. Real places. You will sign the papers that make it happen." "That could be over £1 million, she whispered. "Then you should have thought about that before you stole it," I replied. "And before you tried to buy my husband with part of it." She made a broken sound, somewhere between a sob and a laugh. "You're serious?" "Yes," I said. "And you'll also sign new documents for me. I want my fair share of what Dad intended, not what you decided was enough to keep me quiet. Shares, savings, whatever is left that came from his work and not from your tricks. On paper and in truth this time." "And if I refuse?" she asked, though I think she already knew the answer. "Then the copies go further," I said. "To Patrick, to his lawyers, to the tax office. I won't have to fight you alone. You'll be fighting a system that does not care that you are my sister." There was only her breathing for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small, like the girl she had been before money took up so much space between us. "You hate me," she said. I felt a sharp ache in my chest. "No," I answered honestly. "If I hated you, I would send everything right now and watch your life burn. I don't want that. I just want you to stop standing on me to make yourself taller." Another silence. Then, very quietly, "I'll do it. I'll talk to a different lawyer. We'll draft the trust. We'll redo the papers for you. Just give me time." "You have days, not months," I said. "And remember, I kept this secret for 7 years. Not for you. For Dad. Don't make me regret that." We ended the call soon after. I put the phone down and sat there, listening to the hum of the old fridge, the quiet pipes in the walls. Outside, Brighton was still moving. Cars on the road, people going to pubs, children being called in for bedtime. Inside my little house, something heavy that had been pressing on my chest for years finally shifted. In the weeks that followed, drafts began to arrive by email and post. New lawyers, new tones, new attempts at politeness. The trust was created with funds that made even the professionals raise their eyebrows. My share of my father's work came to me at last, not in glittering luxury but in plain numbers, enough to make me safe without turning me into someone I did not recognize. Adam signed the divorce papers in the end. He got a small settlement from Olivia, far less than he'd been promised. He sent me a single message saying he was sorry. I deleted it. I stayed in my Brighton house. I fixed the peeling paint. I bought a second-hand table that wasn't a crate. I even planted a small rose bush by the bright blue door, because my father had liked roses. Sometimes, when I walk past it, I think of the girl who listened at the study door and quietly began to collect the truth, one page at a time. People think power lives in money, or in big houses in London, or in wedding rings that cost thousands of pounds. But I've learned that real power can also live in something simple, a woman in a small room who knows what was done to her, refuses to forget it, and chooses not revenge, but a different ending. This is mine.